Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining our webinar today. We're going to be discussing in-car entertainment, the UX perspective. After many discussions on this topic, we've realized that this is actually something people will be really interested in. Following a technical collaboration between Siili Auto and Xperi on one hand, and Xperi and SBD Automotive participation on the Experiences per Mile Advisory Council on the other, this webinar materialized. So I think we'll kick off with some introductions. Firstly, I'm Adam Jefferson from SBD, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. SBD is a global consultancy and research organization specializing in the automotive technologies field. We've been operating for over 25 years, offering independent data, research, and consulting that has helped OEMs, suppliers, investors, and governments to develop smart, safe, secure, and sustainable mobility. We're set apart in the industry by a huge breadth of experience, global coverage, depth of industry knowledge, and continuous innovation in our approaches. I'm a user experience specialist, and in my 7 years at SBD, I've run in-depth evaluations on probably 75 production and pre-production infotainment systems. I also work closely with OEM clients at all stages of production to improve and develop their infotainment systems, ranging from initial concept right through to production. Well, I'm pleased to be joined today by Anthony Landamia, Director of Product Management at Xperi, and Conrad Kabaya, CTO at Siili Auto. Welcome to this discussion, and maybe you could give us a brief introduction to your companies and backgrounds.
Sure, and thanks, Adam. So it's great to be part of this exciting discussion here today. And I'm Anthony Landamia. I head up product management for connected car business here at Xperi. So I've been in this industry for quite a long time, coming up on 35 years now. And by now, Xperi, we commercialize products that basically touch every part of the connected cockpit. You know us from things like HD radio, of course, our DTS AutoSense, and that's our in-cabin sensing technologies, DTS AutoStage, that we're really going to dive a little deeper here today, and DTS Audio. And most recently, we're happy to say our all-new video products, where we're really bringing the living room to the car, but we're really far from done. So, we plan to take this much further by tying all this tech together and transforming the car into really an amazing third space. And throughout this discussion, we'll be touching on, bits of that. So thanks again.
Yes, and hello, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm Conrad Kabaya. I'm leading the HMI innovation and development teams at Siili Auto. For the last 9 years, we have been helping OEMs and the platform providers in building wonderful experiences in the cars. And the proof for that is that we have helped to build 20 million cars that are being enjoyed on the roads around the globe so far. We support our customers both in the innovation phase as well as production software development. And we do it in virtually any technology that exists on the market today. And I personally have been at Siili Auto for over a decade. And the most recent project that we have been working on was helping Xperi in designing the future of entertainment experience that we'll be discussing together with Anthony and Adam.
Thanks very much, both. So let's get into the discussion. I might start by taking it back a bit. So I think we're probably all old enough to remember the single-din radio cassette player. In my first car back in 1993, I even had a single-disc CD player, but things have moved on a fair way since then. It would have been impossible to imagine in those days just how critical an influence the infotainment system would have had on the customer's impression on the cockpit, and indeed the whole vehicle. But that's pretty much where we are today. And as we move towards software-defined vehicles and higher levels of autonomy, the digital experience is starting to take over from the analog, and it's becoming the defining factor of the journey. From a UX perspective, I've seen massive change in the systems over the past 10 years, and it feels like today that we're really at a tipping point, particularly with the recent arrival of generative AI, where biometrics, personalization through user accounts, and of course AI, are going to combine to give us hyper-intelligent and predictive services, each one tailored to an individual passenger and their split-second context, and also becoming more tailored by the day. So, Anthony, maybe you can give me your view on this shift and tell us a bit more about how Xperia is adapting to support it.
Sure, but well, Adam, I guess I have you beat here. I recall my first car, it was a 66 Chevy Impala. It didn't even have an 8-track, but it sure had lots of tubes for the AM tuner. So, wow, we've come so far. None of us could have predicted, what we're seeing out there today. So for us, when we talk about, the vehicle as a third space, we're really talking about a car as a place where the user chooses to spend their time, to be productive, entertained, generally enjoys with levels of comfort, safety, privacy, previously really only expected from their home or office, but now we're bringing it to the car. So when we think about the vehicle as a third space, we have to account for new dimensions. It's influenced by all these new use cases, whether it's an EV, or you're driving in various levels of autonomy. We're coming up on level 3 real quick, and 4 and 5 in the near future. So for us, creating a third space is about truly personalized environments, for all the vehicle occupants and in all those use cases. So we consider a place where, we know who you are in every seat. We've learned their habits, their preferences, what they want, and when they want it. And we leverage our in-cabin sensing technologies, our audio, video, of course, our metadata technologies, all provide the driver, with driving information. So for example, front seat passenger, may need to take a video call while little Johnny in the back, he wants to watch a movie, or Sally wants to play games, all while the driver stays focused on the road. For us, we tie all these technologies together, and we predict how and when the technology needs to be used, based on all these, use cases. So the hard work is done. Our products are very matured, and they're launched in millions of cars today. So now the fun of creating these personalized experiences is about to begin.
Well, certainly sounds like a perfect scenario, but do you think the dream really matches the everyday reality? From my perspective, I've witnessed a lot of HMI changes, and in some cases, poor decisions that clearly conflict with customer desires. Perhaps one of the most pertinent is the shift from manual to on-screen digital interfaces, decluttering the cockpit, but hiding controls several layers deep in the infotainment.
So I've been in this industry for, coming up on over 3 decades now. And for those who know me, they know that I've long voiced my opinions about physical controls, versus soft keys. But we need to fast forward to reality of where we are today with the big screens and, buttonless, dashboards. There's lots of unsuccessful implementations. They're all evident in OEM, the OEM's JD Power ratings. That's to say, what the customer is being offered today, we know is not what the customer expects. So Xperia's goal is to address all this by offering solutions that make it easier, more intuitive, safer to interact with all the technologies in the cockpit. For example, our tech enables users to search and find content easier. It literally identifies and learns user behaviors, so we can offer only relevant content, and personalization specific to all the vehicle occupants. And we do this by leveraging our technology to create, these individualized spaces that we're talking about here for all the occupants. For us, that is the third space.
That's really interesting, particularly that you're personalizing this to offer a properly individualized experience. Maybe if I turn to you now, Conrad, perhaps you could tell us a little about how you've gone about designing an effective HMI. Of course, there are multiple conflicting factors, including cost, usability principles, human factors, security, data privacy, safety, and developmental approach. Although we've seen marked improvements in recent years, I believe we've still got a long way to go.
Yeah, I agree with you, Adam. So if I think about the cars on the roads right now, the good news is that there are HMIs that do the great job in finding good balance in these conflicting factors. And then at the same time, those HMIs offer a great user experience. But I agree with you that there is a long way for the industry as a whole to go and reach the point where the experiences are seamless. So that is mainly because the cars are different, the people that are using them are different, and the scenarios in which those cars are being used differ too. So there's no single set of rules that works for everybody. And at the same time, the technology is developing, and there are new products and services that are being added to the cars. So I think all of that creates a space for innovation and building the new great user experiences. And when I'm looking from the perspective of the just last year, we've had a lot of great discussions with Xperi's team to conceptualize the future experience. And to follow on also on what you have said, Adam, the outcome of these discussions was that we will start with the user-first approach that considers the human factors. So after that, we embed the security, data, privacy, and then safety into the user experience. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that those factors are not important, but we have concluded that user was in the front seat, and the rest was adapted to match to make sure that we are creating great user experience and not focusing on solving just a technical task.
Sounds like quite a challenge. So how have you gone about overcoming it?
Yeah, I mean, that is true. So, so let me explain a bit how we have approached this. So at the beginning, we have outlined ourselves three criteria that the experience must follow. So the first criteria was put the user first. So we see this very common in the all great user experience. So the interface must be simple, and users want easy access to the most frequently features, and there should be no or very low entry barrier for them to reach those functions. And then the second criteria was that the experience must be personal, and I don't mean customized, as if you can assign a radio station to the shortcut button, but truly personal. So the system was adapting its behavior to the user, and it was proposing the radio stations and video content by itself, and matching the context, mood, activity, the type of the commute that is happening. So that was the second one. And the last but not least criteria was that we wanted to harness the changes in the user behavior that are happening recently. So we see this accelerated by the proliferation of the electric vehicles, and we see that the patterns change how the cars are being used. And we can see that in the experiences per mile report. So there is a section in the report that breaks down the relation between the features in the cockpit and the type of commute. And you can draw pretty interesting conclusions from that report that will help you in defining the good experiences. So to recap the criteria, the experience must be focused on the user, personal, and aligned with the context. And once we've had all of those initial guidelines, we then move to the next stage, which was the set of iterations that involved shaping the concepts, quick prototyping, and testing the experience on the users.
So how does all this capture an experience that's relevant to the demands of today's users?
Okay, but like before I answer that, let me explain that first we need to understand that Xperi's products are expanding far beyond the traditional radio. We now have full multimedia, entertainment, personalization, connectivity, video, and so on. So if you think about it, this offers entirely different experience than what it used to be. So keeping that in mind, let me now summarize how we have attempted to design the future multimedia experience. In short, at the beginning, we have identified two main types of the users that represent how people use radio. And then we have designed a simple yet, I think, powerful user interface that works for both of those groups. So about the users that I have mentioned. So we have learned that there are two types of the users when it comes to listening to the radio. The first group is the people that like to use the radio like it is a physical device. So let's call it, they use it in a traditional way. They listen to their favorite radio station, and if they don't like the song or the content, they change it. And then the second group of people is the group that wants to listen exactly what they want and they want to control the songs that they listen to. And this group wants to have access to the entire catalog of the content. So we wanted to bring the benefits of the modern radio to the both groups of users, but still follow the unique expectations and behaviors. And at the same time, we wanted to make it simple to use. And by simple, in our mind, we mean don't get lost. So that resulted in a way how the navigation has been working in the Xperi's future radio experience. So we have designed it around the way how those two groups of people listen to the radio or the music. So for the traditional group, we have designed the experience around their favorite stations. The stations appear always in the same place with the same structure resembling the physical radio. And the stations can be accessed with the muscle memory. You don't, you will know where to touch even without looking at the screen. And then for the second group, the experience is based on the personalized recommendations. So we've learned that this group usually wants to listen not to a specific song, although this is possible, but the type of the song. So the content in this section is based on the individual preferences and we suggest the content that the person could like. So in both cases, the system learns the behavior, patterns, feedback, so that recommendations and suggestions are better tuned for the moment. Okay, so we have the types of the users covered, and then I want to mention how the experience is built around them. So another aspect of the future radio experience is the context in which the car is being used or car is being driven. Radio is used differently when driving or when stopped. So when driving, we have learned that the most frequently functions are mute or next song. And when the car is stopped, people tend to explore new content and interact more deeply with the interface. And during our tests, we have also found that what is the most annoying aspect of the interaction with the radio, that is caused by the fact that most of the cars have the touch screens that have been mentioned earlier. So it is a misclick which results in an unwanted change of the song. So the navigation in the radio needs to be structured to reflect those different patterns. And also the placement of the radio controls plays a critical role. So even if you click in the wrong place, it will not spoil your experience. So Adam, I think that it summarizes the key elements that we have discovered when building the future radio experience with Xperi. And just to recap, we have to ensure that the experience is focused on the user. We have to ensure it's personal and it is aligned with the context in which the car is being used.
Thanks, Konrad. That was a really detailed explanation. I always find it fascinating to understand more about the design process that leads to a finished product. And I didn't realize there were so many nuances just to radio usage alone. And you mentioned adding muscle memory to touchscreen. If that works, that's absolute gold. So Anthony, maybe moving back to you now. Presumably the foundation for this was the TiVo home system. After all this optimization for the cockpit, how would you say the two solutions now compare? So maybe what's the key differences, and is the car solution fully formed, or is there still work to do?
Well, first, there's a lot of work to do, but Adam, I mean, let's face it, the car's not a living room on wheels, and just like it's not a mobile phone on wheels, we simply can't expect the user to interact with technology in the car, the same way they're used to, by sitting on their sofas, tied to big screens, using a remote control in their hand for hours on end. I mean, let's face it, it's a cockpit. So in there, we bring that same tech, but we make it usable in a car, where, we have to think of safety, constrained seating, the amount of time they're driving, and the location, it's all these things that, we need to look at to make it more manageable and enjoyable for, the occupants. So the idea is to bring solutions to the car, where the customer needs to physically interact less so they get more of what they want. That's to say, bring in, what they want, when they want it, and make it so simple that the customer really needs to just minimally, input and touch the screen to get quickly where they want to be. Of course, it may sound simple, but there's lots of tech involved here, and I think it's probably better to maybe digress a little and show you a quick demo of something that we call our DTS AutoStage reference, HMI. So bear with me while I try to share my screen. And I'm hoping folks can see this. So here's a sample of what we call our DTS, AutoStage reference HMI. And this is the first screen. And by no way is Xperi saying that we want to take over the OEM's home screen. But for today's purpose, we needed a launch point for DTS AutoStage. So I'm going to go through a little initial setup that the customer experience, like when they first buy their car. So I launched DTS AutoStage. And now we start with the personalization. So there's a process involved, a one-time setup. If you want to get that experience that you are looking for, that's personalized content first, exclusively for you, we have to go through a personalization process. So let me do that right now. So notice what I'm doing. I'm just choosing a few samples. The more you choose, the more granularity you'll have, and maybe, radio stations as well. So we'll choose a few and we'll confirm that. And you see what's happening now. Based on my one-time setup, I'm getting that content first experience. That means, music and content that's interesting for me. And notice there's no buttons and dials here. Instead, we're bringing that content that you said that you liked, regardless of where you need to stream it from. So in this case, we chose, maybe some rock and roll. So we have something from radio, I love rock and roll, or maybe the Bull from SXM, or something from Spotify, so we can deep link directly to that content. At the same time, we'll go to our video experience, taking a little bit to load here. So notice, we also bring video into the vehicle here. Also content first, based on our whole, personalization and one-time setup process. But notice what's happening here. You have a completely separate HMI. So you have an HMI for your video, and HMI for all of your audio. So one of the things we think about here is, let's say we leverage our in-cabin sensing technologies. And from there, the user maybe doesn't have to personalize, or we can have a setting just for mom or dad in the car and get that whole personalized, experience for each individual person in the cockpit without the need to always have to set up personalization. One of the things we're thinking about, and we will be doing this in the future, and that's having a truly aggregated audio video experience. That's to say, in the first screen, there'll be a mix of audio, and video. But we're not going to go at it alone. Our idea is to work with companies, whether it's Frost & Sullivan, or it's JD Power, or of course, SBD Automotive, and we're going to leverage our in-house lab that we're designing in California. It'll be opening, later, probably early in the fall. And we're going to work with OEM partners and determine, is this what the customer wants? Or we're going to do it methodically. And that's where we plan to go, with this. So, the idea here is, when we do this, we want to make sure we get it right. And let me stop sharing my screen. Okay.
Thanks very much. That's really interesting, and it's great to see a brief demo. You mentioned aggregated content. Perhaps you can talk a little about your approach to this. So it's great for the user if it works effectively and shows them what they want. But from a personal perspective, as an example, I subscribe to a popular music on demand service, but I don't ever get the feeling it really knows me. So I want to hit the homepage on a Tuesday evening, a Saturday morning, when I'm driving to work or going on a road trip, whatever. And I want the system to know better than I do what I want to hear at each of those specific moments. Right now, I spend 2 minutes looking at the homepage before switching over to the radio or just choosing an album. So I guess it all comes down to those personalization algorithms as to how well it can truly put the user first. If it really can do that, then you've got a great interface.
Well, Adam, first, it's not just about, aggregating all the content, but really more about how the content's displayed and consumed. This is where, Xperi really shines. The fundamental premise of our DTS, AutoStage audio and the video products is the unique, and you heard me mention it in the demo, but it's this whole content first strategy. So just imagine a user interface where you don't need to flip through radio stations or surf through endless amounts of content providers, just to find something you might like, but instead be presented with content that we know you like, at the time of day or the type of drive, that you're on, and, have it simply start playing the content. So in that first screen, you're presented with an aggregated mix of music, movies, podcasts, regardless of where it needs to be consumed. where to consume the content now becomes secondary. So this is for us really a truly aggregated content first experience, and that's where we plan to take this industry.
Okay. Let me follow up on that, Anthony. So I'm a technical guy, so I see it also fascinating from the technical perspective that the system is constantly learning, so that it can recommend the next best content. So, and by the next best content, I mean, what is the next song? What is the next radio station or a podcast that you want to hear? And then the challenge is how to do it with as little interaction as possible. So if I think about it, the outcome of the aggregated content first experience that Anthony mentions is the true personalization. So in the true personalization, this system starts learning from the moment that you enter the car, and then the content that is presented to you is personalized based on your preferences, time of day, type of commute, and so on. And now imagine a scenario. A family is driving on the road trip, and there can be different recommendations based on the fact that the passengers start to sing the songs that are being played. So the singing would be a feedback for the system that it is a good content, and it would influence the next song selection. I want to emphasize this is not integrated in the system yet, but just imagine what are the possibilities.
Yeah, it'll be fantastic. I really look forward to giving it a try. So the last topic I'd love to discuss is individualized sound zones in your car. So by sound zones, I mean using noise cancelling to create individualized zones for each passenger to consume audio and also video without the need for headphones. So it's something we've heard a fair bit about in recent years. And I know several suppliers and OEMs have demonstrated concepts, but it's not something that we've seen in production yet. I believe this is also something that you're working on.
Sure. I'm happy to share our technologies. They've been launched really in millions of cars and actually billions of devices today. You may not know Xperi by name, but you certainly know our products. We touch basically every part of your life. And so, for us, the groundwork, it's been laid. The heavy lifting, it's all been done. So right now, we plan to focus our attention on kind of stitching all these technologies together. We want to leverage our personalization, our identification technologies, together with our machine learning, and create those individualized zones that address the needs and desires of everyone in the vehicle. So we'll work together with all of our partners and industry experts, and we want to do it in a smart way. And we can, and we will create those extraordinary experiences, really, that no one else can do, except Xperi.
Well, this has all been really interesting. So now, as we draw to a close, perhaps it would be a good time to have a final thought from each of us. So I'll start. For me, a question that we're asked a lot is where things are going to be in 2030. In terms of the cockpits, I believe we'll be much closer to a fully software-defined car. We'll have far closer relationships between many of the components, extensive use of artificial intelligence, and give seamless interactions where now they're probably often pain points. Of course, these will depend on significant biometric, personalized, and contextual knowledge to inform useful and relevant recommendations and feedback. I think it's a very useful time to be involved in this, and I don't believe that we'll be able to underestimate the challenges that we'll be faced with over the next few years. Konrad, maybe a couple of ending thoughts for you.
Yeah, of course. I have to warn you that I'm a man of today. So when I'm thinking about the future, I'm thinking about the road, how to get there. So, and that leads me to the thinking that today, the good experience design is hard because there are hundreds of features that are available in the modern cars. And that number will only go higher as more technology is being integrated into them. So it is not feasible already for quite some time that to have a button for each function. And that is why the digital interface is needed. And because of different users, different behaviors, different needs, cultures, and then the driving context, there is no single HMI that works for everybody. So I believe that the solution for this challenge is the personalization of the experience, so that the experience is different in a good way for everybody, and it is matching the unique preferences of the people. And I think that the current technology and connected radio services from Xperi are enabling that right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with your views on personalization. Anthony, do you have any final thoughts?
Sure, but first, before we close, I do want to thank you and Conrad for this great discussion today. And I guess from the Xperi side, we do have a couple key takeaways. First, let me say, when it comes to entertainment, content first means user first. It's time to break the content silos, and give drivers and passengers a reimagined, unified user experience. And next, the future of car entertainment is really inextricably tied to in-car experiences. The car transcends utilitarianism. It becomes a third space, a space where people can be productive and truly enjoy. And I guess the final thought, Xperi is uniquely positioned to define this new trend. Let's call it, an adaptive, cabin space, if you will, a place that leverages all of our technologies, both in-cabin, infotainment, our DTS Auto Stage, and the in-cabin sensing technologies, our DTS AutoSense. So thanks again.
Well, Anthony, Conrad, thank you very much today for your input. It's been great to see a brief demo of your system, and it's been really interesting to watch it gaining serious traction in the automotive space. I'll be sure to follow it. So that brings our webinar today to a close. If you've got any further questions, please reach out to any of us. Thank you very much for joining us, and many thanks to my fellow experts, Anthony and Conrad.